that, we're at a point in time in our country where we're either going to turn left or we're going to turn right. I think it's time to actually find the ability to be able to talk and have open lines of communication and not just shut down because somebody's red or blue or Democrat or Republican, but really have a good, solid conversation and not throw those nasty words and terminologies to each other, right? So would it be beneficial to people to go in being nice rather than being forcefully asshole-ish?
Oh, absolutely. Listen, this is a relationship building. I mean, this is a relationship business, and relationships are all about give and take and getting to know someone and making them feel comfortable. And so, I think a lot of times, and part of it is because obviously it's my job to track bills and to track issues, but a lot of times constituents are more reactionary. They see a bill, that the media has run a story on, and now they're all concerned, and they're going to start calling a lot of legislators about it. Get involved early in the process. Sit down with your local elected officials and say, these are the issues that are important to me. Are these on the horizon for the next legislative session? And if so, then okay, I've got several months or weeks. I need to start talking about this issue. They need to know that I'm already concerned about this, or that I think that they should consider going in this direction. I think it's important to play offense, to not always be on the defense, try not to be reactionary, get involved early in the process. And, just remember that, you're one person in their district, but they're hearing from many times hundreds of people. And so, obviously, if you can work to really build a relationship with them, get to know them, it's great that if the issue is important to you, but also, what's important to them. Relationships are give and take, and, certainly I think that they are going to be more open to, altering things or to hear from a different perspective if you certainly are respectful and polite and have a good attitude.
Beautiful. So, Kellen, we've talked a lot about, what lobbying is today. We've talked about how to act with people, how to be nice. But let's just talk about how do we get this done, right? All right, if we want to get medical cannabis done and passed in a state that doesn't have medical cannabis done, or a bill specifically here in Georgia that we're very passionate about, we want to make sure that boll weevils are protected, right? How do we do that? What is the process that we go about?
Well, first, always good to have lobbyists involved. Certainly I'll put that plug out there. But if you're not going to go that route, then I think, depending on what the issue is, once again, I would start with your local rep. I would start with your local senator, sit down with them, let them know, this is something that's important to me. I think it's always helpful as well when legislators hear if there's broad consensus on a subject area or an issue. I think, too, that legislators look to, okay, what's happening in other states, and not just any state, but, obviously there's certain states that Georgia look to more. There's certain states that we, typically tend to model, or, states that look similar in, population and demographics and other things that pulling a list of a certain state saying, hey, look, they've done this in these several states, that can always be helpful on pushing an issue forward. But I think, once again, this goes back to timing. It's starting early and building a broad base of support and really a grassroots network to get something passed. But it starts with, whatever industry it is or whatever organization it is that needs something passed. It's, reaching out to your local folks, starting there, trying to gain, broad support for it, having a grassroots plan on how to get out this message. Media can be helpful in certain ways. It can also be not helpful. It depends on what the issue is. But, I think just the biggest takeaways are start early and start local.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about the time frame on it. So speaking specifically here in Georgia, the legislative session just started again. And I guess my question would be, so you're talking about starting early. I agree wholeheartedly. If somebody thinks that they're going to come in with 11 days left in the session and get a bill passed, is that possible?
It is possible. Technically, it's possible, but it would be very challenging. Is it
plausible? There you go.
It is plausible, right. It is possible, but that would be, that'd be a pretty heavy lift. So the way it works in Georgia is we have a 40-day session. that generally spans from January to the beginning of April, depending on the legislative calendar. We do not know when the 40-day session will end this year. We only have the calendar set for the first 5 legislative days. If a bill does not cross one chamber, get voted out of one chamber before day 30 and make it through crossover day, then technically it is dead for the year.
Right.
But you can, and this is where it gets tricky, if there is a bill late in session that is moving, that's a vehicle that has crossed over, and it is technically not germane, you could actually attach your language to their bill that is moving. But
okay.
that is a trickier scenario. It is harder to do. You are in a much better position if you are looking to file a bill to get it filed early in the session, which will give you time to start advocating it, to talking to members, getting down to seeing where your votes are on it, and if you have the support for it. So always better to start earlier in the session. It's not impossible to pass a bill later in the session, but your likelihood of getting something passed late in the process is a lot lower.
Yeah, and I think it's a great point right now to let our listeners know here on the Veterans for Cannabis podcast. We're joined by Kellen Carr. Kellen, so on that, you talked about getting the support. Well, okay, I've already talked to my state rep or my state senator. They support me. What are you talking about? We've got about 5 minutes left. What are you talking about on that? What other support do I need?
Right, that's a good question. So, obviously, let's say you want to file a bill. So, the first thing you want to do is you're going to need to find your bill sponsor. So let's say you've already found your bill sponsor and you have a state rep or a state senator who's willing to file your bill. Then you're going to want to help that person look for co-signers on your bill. So that's basically like saying, here's additional support for your bill. You've got a sponsor, and then you have several co-signers or co-sponsors on the bill. The way a bill works is, it's filed, it's assigned to committee, and then depending on the committee, it may need to go to subcommittee and then full committee. And then if it gets voted out of full committee, it has to go to rules. It has to be voted out of rules to get to the floor for a vote. And then once it's, voted out of the floor, it transfers over to the other chamber, and you start the entire process over again.
Right.
So to really get a bill moving and all the way through, you've got to have, sponsors. You've got to have support from the chairman of a committee or enough committee members for it to be a favorable vote. You also need support from that chairman to even get a hearing on that bill. And then after committee, that's the same for the rules. Our rules committees decide what bills get, to the floor and get voted on. And then you advocate for passage on the floor. And you're doing this in 2 different chambers for final passage.
Right.
And then, of course, you also need to lobby the governor's office, because the last thing you want to do is get a bill all the way through the process if it's something that the administration's not supportive of and be at risk of a veto. So you really want to make sure that you have a game plan of building support through the entire process of getting a bill to final passage.
Thank you so much. And I know you all listeners just got a complete American government, class all in one right then, which is phenomenal. But I think the key there is, Kellen, it's it sounds a little bit like a lot of work. I know that, and I don't want people to be scared of the process of getting a bill done, but that's also where Excelsis Public Strategies would come into play and what you do every day, because it is a lot of work. It's not unattainable and unachievable on a personal level, because you can see what we've done from Veterans for Cannabis standpoint with no funding and just advocacy work over the last 5 years. But if you want to get it all the way done and you want to try to do it by yourself, it's not impossible, but it would be behoove you to have a group to go with you, right? Either other constituents in your voting district, other members of the House and Senate, just like you said, you got to have those co-sponsors. That's the key. But if you don't have that, look at Excelsis Public Strategies or another, lobbying group just like yourself, right?
That's right. And certainly, people pass bills, all the time without lobbyists. Lobbyists can just assist with the process, which can be complicated. But, if you're working on a good issue, and you have a champion legislator who is fired up about it, and they're ready to help you because they believe in the cause, they're going to walk you through that process.
Absolutely.
But, I think the key of, my time in politics has been, I'm most successful when I have a broad base of support. If you can build a coalition and you have other people willing to be vocal on your issue, that's always helpful as well.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Kellen Carr, thanks so much today. If our listeners want to reach out to you or learn a little bit more about Excelsis Public Strategies, how do they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Probably the best way, and I need to eventually get up a website, and I'm going to do that, especially now that we're in those times. But the best way would be probably through phone or email.
Okay.
And so, Joshua, you tell me the best way to do that. I don't know if it's...
Yeah, I'll tell you what. How about let's post it up.
Or maybe reach out to you and you can connect.
Yeah, absolutely. I think let's post it on the website where the podcast is going to be, and that way they can reach out to you if they have any questions after this.
Absolutely. That sounds great.
Perfect. Kellen Carr, thank you so much for joining us here on the Veterans for Cannabis podcast today. You have been an absolute joy, and you gave our listeners a complete understanding of what American government is.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Joshua. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us here on the Veterans for Cannabis podcast. I'm Joshua Littrell. We'll talk to you soon.
Line over there, over there. Send the word over there. That the Yanks are coming, the Yanks are coming. The drums coming everywhere. So prepare, say a prayer. Send the word to beware. We'll be over, we're coming over, and we won't come